So what comes next for the newly liberated nation? Joining me now with reaction in Jerusalem is the Christian Broadcast Network's Eric Stakelbeck. And in Washington, D.C., we have former National Security Advisor Stephen Hadley with us. Stephen, let me start with you. And I have some very harsh words because I think at the end of the day, we have weakened America's influence in the world. And let me explain what I mean by that. Confusion, incompetence, lack of decisiveness, contradiction among, Hillary Clinton. One moment she's supporting Egypt, then asking Mubarak to step down, contradicting the vice president. I think there was an amazing incompetence and contradiction by our own administration. Your reaction?
Well, it is very difficult to ride the tiger when you get into these kinds of events. I think the administration was behind the power curve, maybe most of the way through. But I think, and maybe, Sean, you're right, there's some damage. But I think over the long term, if this revolution in Egypt goes well, if we can help them over the next months ahead do a transition to a real democratic government, I think that is going to be a real triumph for American policy, a triumph for the Egyptian people, and a good thing at the end of the day. So, it was bumpy along the road, but I think the real question is going to be how Egypt goes forward in the months and years ahead.
Stephen, maybe we just have a difference of opinion here because I don't really share your confidence, but I have deep respect for you personally here, as evidenced by Doug Schoen's poll. Doug was on last night on the program here, and he points out in particular, Sharia law. Recent polls in Egypt show that 84% say that apostates, or those who forsake Islam, should face the death penalty. 77% say that, in fact, if someone is caught in a robbery, that their hands ought to be cut off, and 54% believe men and women should be segregated in the workplace. This is Egyptian popular opinion polls, and backed by a number of polls that have come out.
Well, you also have some popular opinion polls that are being demonstrated on the streets behind you and over the course of the week or two. And I think what's interesting is that this was not a Hamas-led, a Hezbollah-led, it was not a Muslim Brotherhood-led revolution. It was really people standing up and calling for their rights. It was done really in the name of Egyptian patriotism. So I think one of the real challenges is because of the policies of Hosni Mubarak, there were really only two choices to the Egyptian people, either the government party or the underground Muslim Brotherhood. The transition that they need to go through now is to give an opportunity for non-Islamist parties, for civil society to organize themselves so they can participate in this election, and so that the Egyptian people can really have a free and fair election and a range of choices. And my belief is, at the end of the day, when they exercise that choice, it will not be to impose Sharia law on themselves or an Islamist government. This has been a revolution in the name of freedom and democracy.
My fear is what we saw in Turkey from 2002 till this day, is the country has slowly but surely shifted right, and at a very important, crucial moment in a war on terror, when we needed their support and help, it wasn't granted us, and you know very well what happened.
Right.
Let me, if I can, go to Eric, who is in Jerusalem tonight. Eric, let me ask you first what's on the ground. I've got to believe that the Israelis share my concern, knowing the fear that the Muslim Brotherhood and Islamic State could emerge here.
Yes, Sean, absolutely. I have to tell you, I've been talking to Israeli officials on and off the record here all week in Jerusalem. They don't share Stephen's optimism. They see two parties benefiting from this, Sean, the Muslim Brotherhood and Iran. The Brotherhood has been working towards this day, Sean, for 60 years. It's a golden opportunity for them, and they're not going to let it pass by. In terms of Iran, there's a real fear here in Israel that Egypt will now move into that Iranian orbit, along with Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, and yes, even Turkey is entering the fray now. So there's a real fear here that the Brotherhood now is going to take power in Egypt, and there's almost a pincer movement here, Sean, surrounding Israel with all their enemies, and who knows how it's going to go now in Egypt. There's a lot of uncertainty here.
Well, it seems, and Stephen will give you the last word on this, but that the Brotherhood, throughout this crisis, they did get more involved as the process was unfolding. Secondly, they've called for preparing for war against Israel. Third, they're the only organized political opposition group right now that exists. I've got to believe that that gives them some advantage, especially if so many people in Egypt support Islam as part of the political discourse and process there.
They have an advantage. That's why we need a time for an orderly transition. But look, what are the options? If we had encouraged Mubarak to hang on, if he had hung on, if the army had cracked down on the demonstrators, that would have delivered the crowd and the Egyptian people to the Muslim Brotherhood. I think the other thing, Sean, is I'm a little concerned when Republicans talk are afraid of freedom. That wasn't the way of Ronald Reagan. A Republican the other day said to me, are you worried about the contagion spreading? No. Contagion is what you apply to a disease. I don't think the Republican Party should view the spread of freedom and democracy as disease. That's what we stand for.
I agree, but I also know the reality of Islamic extremism and the force that they can have and the influence they can have over society, so I think it's a legitimate fear. But I wish we had more time, gentlemen. Thank you for being with us.
Sean, I would say here...
Go ahead.
I would say here in Israel, the fear isn't freedom, the fear is Sharia law.
All right. I think that's my fear, and I think Stephen probably agrees with that to some extent. Indeed. Guys, thanks for being with us. And coming up,